All right, so Finance Minister Tito Mboweni will be delivering his budget speech on Wednesday, and there'll be great expectations for far and wide from individuals like you and I that pay tax, but also businesses will be wondering what's next, and small businesses as well. Well, let's talk now to investment strategist Nadir Thokan, who's going to tell us a little bit about perhaps what we can expect. Every year, it seems, we say this is going to be the most difficult budget for the finance minister. And seemingly it is always true, but we really are at a crossroads, aren't we?
Yeah, Peter, and it is consistently true because we are consistently falling short of the growth estimates which has been promised or forecast in the previous year's budget. Now, you know, the ratings agencies have said it time and time again, and it still rings true, that the only way South Africa gets out of the difficult position that it's in is if we grow our way out of this problem. Now, the only way we get growth going in South Africa is if we get policy certainty going, we get business confidence going, we get consumer confidence going, and those kind of conspire together to get businesses investing more and creating more employment, and ultimately those people who are employed spending more within the economy, and in terms of policy certainty, just a more efficient use of taxes, but also government providing more certainty on things which are holding up economic growth, and those are countless. You know, the allocation of spectrum for the mobile operators, you know, where we stand on land redistribution, where we stand on national health insurance. You know, these need to be issues which are clearly communicated by government, and not just pockets of government, you know, coming out with this rhetoric and ad hocly saying this is going to be implemented.
All right. And that's all very well. We know what needs to be done, but actually the finance minister has to deal with what is right now. As the keeper of the national pocket, much like you and I, we earn money and we spend it. The finance minister earns his money from tax. And so the question is, with all the spending that he's done, we've overspent in previous years, so our budget's not looking great. With him relying on income tax, but with people not doing well, with businesses not doing well, that means he's getting less money coming in.
That's right.
The spending isn't decreasing. In fact, it's increasing. So what can he do? He can only increase the earnings by raising tax.
Well, that's right. Or what he can do to balance the budget more is to cut expenditure. You know, and there are a couple of low-lying fruits with regards to cutting expenditure. I mean, just to put some numbers to what you're mentioning about it's getting more and more difficult for the finance minister, there's essentially a 53 billion rand hole in South Africa's balance sheet. So, and that 53 billion rand, I'm not saying that's what we're borrowing. I'm saying that's the amount of spending over and above, or the deficits over and above what was forecast at last year's budget. And that was communicated at the medium-term budget policy statement. So we've got this 53 billion rand hole that's bigger than what we expected last year. How do we plug that? We can cut expenditure, or we can increase taxes. Now, increasing taxes, there are a lot of commentators saying, you know, there's potential to lift VAT at 15%. We're not close to, you know, the upper quartile of the world, particularly in the developed markets, where in a number of those countries, VAT is in excess of 20%. The problem is that in the developed markets, you know, people can generally afford to absorb 20% VAT rates. In South Africa, an increase in VAT hits the poor the hardest. And secondly, you know, people are getting very little bang for their buck in terms of paying VAT. So people are very grumpy, you know, in order to do that. The other thing is that it does generate some sort of cost push inflation when the economy is very weak. And that has knock-on impacts in terms of how the Reserve Bank can react in terms of dealing with that. So I think the easiest thing, or not the easiest thing, but really the only option that the finance minister is going to have is to cut expenditure. One thinks about the wage bill in South Africa, the state wage bill, which is far too high. You know, a number of institutions have come out and said state-owned entities are, you know, overburdened with the amount of people that they employ. Although that's a difficult balancing act, you know, because you'll face a lot of resistance from the unions, etc. So difficult to see where he's going to get spending cuts from.
How do you cut expenditure when you look at it? The only real place you can cut expenditure in those SOEs genuinely is going to be cutting the labor costs. And that's not a palatable choice, is it?
Well, you mentioned it. South Africa is at a crossroads, you know. So unfortunately, the reality, Peter, is that we've reached decision time. So we either have to take the hard decision, or we have to reap the consequences of indebting many future generations of South Africans to come. The ratings agencies have put us on notice. They have all aggressively said that the only way we are not downgrading South Africa is if we improve growth. So, you know, we don't have to take the tough decisions, but we have to understand that those come with consequences, and we're going to be paying for those consequences for multiple generations to come if we don't take those hard decisions.
All right, so really difficult choices that he's going to have to make, but somebody's going to have to feel some pain, whether it's us, whether it's the SOEs, whether it's the fiscus itself in terms of cutting expenditure. But you're an investment strategist, you've got clients who've got cash, and they come to you and they say, listen, do we invest in South Africa or do we take our money elsewhere? Are we a compelling choice under these circumstances?
Yeah, so look, I think that in terms of if we are a compelling choice, it's very clear that there are better avenues for growth globally than what there is in South Africa. Having said that, you know, the markets are fairly efficient and there's very little free lunch, if any, inefficiently priced markets. So what that means is that global opportunities are a lot more richly valued than what South African opportunities are. And to give you an indication of that, you know, we know our finances are in trouble, but the reality is that in Germany, on a 10-year bond, you've actually got to pay the government for the privilege of lending them money. In South Africa, you're still getting, you know, call it a 8.7 to 8.8% yield on a 10-year government bond. Now, in a world that's starved of yield, that's a very compelling investment case, not because South Africa as an investment destination is compelling, just because our rates are so much higher than the rest of the world. And similarly with our stock markets, you know, our price to earnings multiples are very low, but our growth outlook for our companies are very low relative to what's available internationally. So, you know, I think it's really about being as efficiently diversified as possible and having access to multiple different pockets of return, all that will do different things and are a part of your overall portfolio, all for a different reason. And South Africa is undoubtedly does have something to offer within that diversified blend of opportunities.
So what are you looking for that might be a ray of hope? Because your clients will be calling on Thursday morning and saying, "So Nadir, what do we do? Do we get out of equities? Do we go into something else? Might the tax-free savings basket be affected, for example?"
Yeah, look, so I think that the tax-free savings basket, if anything, the threshold would just be lifted, if anything. And the reason for that is the government wants to encourage our population to save as much as possible so they don't become a burden on the state later on. Tax-free savings is always a very compelling kind of investment over the long term. The tax saving that you get combined with the compounding really is beneficial. Currently, that limit is a 500,000 Rand lifetime limit with a 33,000 Rand annual contribution. Hopefully, we'll see that increased. But I think in general, the things we'll be looking out for in this budget is a concrete plan to cut the budget deficit and a concrete plan to get growth going. If we get those two things simultaneously over the course of the next 2 years, our companies will be in a lot better place to invest, and our equities and our companies listed on the JSE will be in a better position to reap the benefits of that and deliver decent earnings growth and unlock value for investors. If we don't get that, it's going to be a hard push to say increase South African equities and exposure from this point forward.
All right, and Nadir, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks so much indeed for coming through. And it seems quite clear that pain is coming, but it's just a question of who's the one who's going to feel it the most. But certainly hard choices for the finance minister on Wednesday, and we'll certainly be giving you coverage of all of that. And also in the days leading up to it, we'll be chatting to various people, just getting a sense of what we might need to prepare ourselves for. Stay with us. Still lots more to come right here on SA Today.